Hello, people. Right. I've, for this particular video, I'm using a prompting thing because I've written a script. I'm going to try and stick to it. It stops me from being really, really insulting. But I just wanted to talk about my local housing association, Crosskeys Homes, um, and pretty much the diabolical way that they've treated me and my wife as well. Um, and and the way that even though we got in touch with the local MP, he pretty much washed his hands of the whole thing as well, which means he won't get my vote next time. um, and I am a Tory, so there you go. Anyway, look, if I seem to be fumbling a bit, it's because maybe the words are scrolling a bit too quick, and I can only think in one speed. But anyway, here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the story concisely. I'll try from start to finish. It shouldn't take any more than 10 minutes. So you've not got to grab a big tub of popcorn or whatever you like. Now, about 8 or 9 years ago, I can't remember which, but I'm sure it's more than 7 years, I moved to a small village on the Links Cams border with my mum, who was suffering from COPD. Now, COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Now, she had it. She was diagnosed with it a long, long time ago. She was still working, but she carried on smoking. Eventually, she became very, very, very poorly. So, but I moved in with her on the same day that she moved in. I was working in Oakham. I was a care worker, and I managed to divide my time between sleeping in at the care home and also looking after my mum. She didn't need a lot of help back then. Now the thing is, I've lived in this home. Um, right from then up until this precise moment in time. I did spend a month sleeping at a property in Peterborough, which my wife at the time was renting. That was to look after the dogs while she was in hospital. Since then, my wife left me, so I remained at the property in Barnock, the one that was rented by my mum. Essentially, and I'll probably reiterate this point a few times during this video, I've lived in this house in Barnock without break since me and my mum both moved into it many years ago. Like I say, I can't remember exactly when. It was 7, 8 years ago, something like that. Now, in January this year, 2020, January 30th to be precise, that was like 4 days after my birthday, my mother succumbed to a disease and she died in Peterborough Hospital. In a way, it was unexpected that it was going to happen on that day, and I've spoken about it before. I've spoken about me mum quite a few videos on this channel, so I'm not going to talk about the heartache that I went through immediately after the fact that she died. But once the dust had settled, I mean, we were waiting for my mum to be cremated, but and then I could kind of move forward, once I got through that, because that's kind of an emotional thing, basically putting your mother to rest. But pretty much once the dust had settled, it's certainly within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, because you've got to imagine for those first few weeks, I was in no fit state to actually do anything. But anyway, I informed Crosskeys of my mum's death, and I was granted a succession of tenancy. Now, this is an important part of the story. Since I was living in the Barnet property alone, my wife and I had separated in September, October last year. I wasn't granted a tenancy to the property itself, as I would be under occupying it. There's 2-bedroom house, just me resident. It's like it makes sense for me to be offered a 1-bedroom property, and I was quite happy to move into the property they're offering me. It was albeit it was a pokey little 1-bedroom bed sit in Barnock. But then the lockdown happened and my move was put on hold. And during the intervening months, my wife and I got back together, and she moved into the Barnet property with me. My youngest daughter also moved in, and we informed Crosskeys that my wife no longer wanted the tenancy of the Peterborough property, as it was three-bedroom house, and her and her youngest daughter, as well as moving in with me, would have been under occupying the Peterborough house. So instead, we asked for tenancy of the Barnet property. That's that my home. Um, it would have been suitable, not just because it was a two-bedroom property, but because um, as well as being ideal for the three of us, it'd been adapted for a disabled person, my mum, um, and it would have been more than suitable for my wife, who's also registered disabled. Now, we started to decorate the Barnet house. Because we were given conflicting information. We were told that yeah, you can stay in there, you and your wife and your wife's daughter. But then we were informed that we would not be able to take over the tenancy of the house. Instead, Crosskeys would continue to offer me the tenancy of the bedsit previously mentioned, and my wife and her daughter would have to remain in the three-bedroom house in Peterborough. Now, I think that most people would probably, I'm hoping I explained it well enough, but I think most people could see how illogical that is. I mean, Crosskeys wanted to split up a family and force us to live in two properties, one of which our separated family would be under occupying. And through various communications, they refused to budge. This was with quite a few different members of staff. I lost my rag with a robotic member of the Crosskeys staff, and I insulted him before emailing the board of directors and complaining to my local MP. I mentioned him before. What I'm going to do now is read the email I received from Stuart Fort. He's apparently the director of housing needs at Crosskeys, and it's in response to my email of complaint. Now, I'm going to read it, but I'll be making comments throughout. So let's get into it. Right, okay, here we go. Following your email of yesterday, this is me pretending to be Stuart Fort. Following your email of yesterday afternoon to Ali Manji, I can advise of the following. In your conversation with Ali Manji yesterday, you were, by your own admittance, rude and abusive to a member of our staff. We will not tolerate this kind of behaviour, and I need to inform you that this is a clear breach of your tenancy. Well, actually, Stuart, it wasn't actually an email; it was a telephone conversation. But hey, anyone can make a mistake, can't they? Now, I've not had time to peruse the tenancy agreement. And I did actually sign an agreement. I can remember that. But then it also appears that Mr. Fort couldn't be asked to read it either, because otherwise he would have directed me to the appropriate paragraph. I mean, that's how I would deal with it. But obviously Stuart, no. Anyway, I'm sure he's telling the truth, because like most organisations, particularly those who have dealings with customers who may become irate, they always have something in their contract stating they won't tolerate blah blah blah. Anyway, I did apologise to Mr. Manji in the email I sent, and this is a fact that Mr. Fort doesn't even acknowledge. It would appear as though neither Mr. Manji nor Stuart Fort have accepted my initial apology. So I'll apologise again right here in front of everybody that's watching this video. Now, Mr. Manji, I'm aware that I insulted you a few times during our phone call, and that I swore once. But in all honesty, all I can do is apologise to you for behaving like that. My condition, borderline personality disorder, means that when I lose my temper, I'm acting on a fight or flight impulse. To be honest, I can't recall exactly what I've said or done during that moment. Now, I don't intend this to be an excuse, but it is a reason as to why I behave that way. In any case, that's like my apology, and I hope you'll be the bigger man to accept it. And also take into account the fact that I am mentally ill, for want of a better phrase, and that's an important fact which I'll raise a bit later on. Anyway, I don't know if that that apology is going to be accepted, but there you go. It was sincerely meant. Now we're going to go back to Stuart and his email. Now he said it's quite pertinent considering what I'm doing at the moment. He said, in addition, you have posted a YouTube video where you were critical of actually, YouTube is one word, and the U is it's got a capital Y and the T's got a capital T. So, but it's one word. You haven't put it like that, Stuart. Anyway, look, in addition, you've posted a YouTube video where you are critical of Crosskeys homes and in particular towards members of our staff who you have also named. Please consider taking this video down immediately before we consider further action. Now, am I not allowed to be critical towards Crosskeys and its members of staff? I think I am. Indeed, the freedom of speech and expression is not forbidden by Crosskeys in its tenancy agreement, mainly because it is freedom of speech and expression, and that's not forbidden in law. So anyway, Stuart, I'm not going to take it down. I'm not going to take that video down. If you've not seen that video, it's somewhere back there. You can have a look. I won't take it down for that precise reason. It's freedom of expression and an opinion, and basically like it or lump it. Right, and you know, I'm pretty certain that after you sent me this email, because it don't seem like you proofread it very well, but after you sent me your email, you probably paid a visit to the legal department at Crosskeys, and if they're legal bods that are worth their money, then they would have told you that there is actually no further action for you to consider. Check out the law before you make demands, Stuart. It kind of prevents you from ending up with egg on your face. I mean, I wonder what rubbish you're going to threaten me with after this video, but hey, you know, I've had lots of things thrown at me in the past, so I don't really care. Well, okay, back to Stuart. Whilst you may not like decisions that are made, we will always conduct ourselves in a reasonable and polite manner, and we expect you to do the same. There must be no further repeats of these incidents or behaviour towards Crosskeys or any of our staff. Well, I'm not really sure what incidents and behaviour he's talking about. I mean, there was only one incident of me being abusive towards a member of staff. And the fact that I was angry with him, but I've actually apologised to Mr. Manji twice. Once in an email that I sent to Crosskeys, and also just a couple of minutes ago. I don't know if Stuart's also talking about the previous video, but in any case, I'm going to continue to express my right to freedom of speech. And as such, this video is very critical of Cross Homes Limited and its staff, and it's not going to be taken down. Trust me. Right, back to Stuart. I can also want to be clear on the position with your tenancy at 2 Little Norfolk. Hang on. I can also want to be clear on the position with your tenancy at 2 Little Northfields. Actually, Stuart, that doesn't make any sense. That's a typo. For shame, Stuart. Anyway, he wants to be clear on the tenancy. Blah blah blah. Following the death of your mother, yeah. Thanks for the condolences there, Stuart. Really, really nice of you. Following the death of your mother, we have allowed you to succeed to the tenancy, not the property. You have clearly stated that you only moved back in with your late mother in September last year, so our decision to allow you to succeed to the tenancy was generous, and we were clear that you would need to leave the property. Actually, Stuart, I didn't only move back into the house with my late mother in September. I slept elsewhere for a month in September to look after my wife's dogs when she was in hospital. I mentioned that a bit earlier. You can call it a holiday if you like. You don't throw people out on the streets when they have a holiday, when they're not at home for like 3, 4, 5 weeks. Some people have like a fantastic holiday in America or somewhere like that, and they might be away for 2 months. What are you going to do? Turf them out on the street, Stuart? That's a bit daft, isn't it? Right, okay. He also goes on to say, you did not dispute this when you applied to succeed to the tenancy. I didn't mention anything of the sort when I applied to succeed the tenancy. I mean, I told your member of staff, and I can't remember who, was it Lisa? When she came round to the house in Barnet to get me to sign paperwork, I told her that I'd lived at the Barnet house ever since my mum and me moved there some years ago. Um, so it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. Stuart says, you were also still named on the tenancy agreement for the house in Peterborough with your wife. Now, my wife and I asked that I should be removed from that tenancy. That was just a few weeks after she assumed the tenancy of the property in Peterborough. And the reason for that was that it would be impossible for me to actually live full time in that property because I was caring for my mum. All I could manage to do was just stop there once or twice a week, and it just seemed to make more sense for me not to be on that tenancy agreement. Um, but that's because my mum had a terminal illness, Stuart. I'm speaking very slowly just in case you haven't kind of grasped that. Um, anyway, yeah, my mum needed care, not just during the day, but during the night as well. And, frequently, and I was used to it because I worked in care before, but frequently I get woken up in the middle of the night um, to help her. Sometimes it would be to call the ambulance. Sometimes it would be to offer her support. But yeah, she needed me to stay in the house. But I kind of guess that memo got lost by Crosskeys staff as well. Um, anyway, Stuart says, and it is only very recently, at the beginning of June 2020, that you have changed your desire for a one bedroom. That um, I if you're going to send out a business type email or one where you're kind of answering complaints, it kind of you really should be writing the email, and you should probably write it, put it to one side for probably half an hour. I'm sure you can manage to find half an hour in your busy day, Stuart. Put it to one side, then reread it. Make sure that you've not put anything in there that is unprofessional, and then read it a few more times to make sure there's no typos. But um, that is something that obviously you didn't do, Stuart. Anyway, look, that you have changed your desire for a one bedroom property to instead remain at Two Little Northfields, indicating that your wife will be joining you in the next month or so. Firstly, Stuart, you're not aware of the fact that occasionally estranged couples sometimes get back together? Or is that something that you and Crosskeys staff see to ridicule? Secondly, we told lots of members of staff over the phone, which conveniently means that you got no record of that. We told lots of members of staff that my wife was moving back in with me, along with a daughter as well. Evidently, you've chosen to disregard this completely. But you know what? You know what, Stuart? People are also entitled to change their desire. It's not, it's not set in stone. Anyway, back to Stuart because it's quite entertaining. I mean, I've spotted a couple more typos that I didn't see the first time I read it. When I read something, because obviously I write books. When I read something, I generally spot the typos. They just kind of come out glaring at me. Anyway, Stuart says you also made a payment to reduce rent arrears at the same what? you also made a payment to reduce rent arrears at the same what? I mean, I could think what would logically fit there, but it could be at the same elephant. It could be at the same holiday. It could be anything, in fact. My God. Anyway, look, he goes on to say we were quite happy to help you gain alternative one bedroom accommodation, and you would have been considered for one bedroom properties we are developing in Barnet. So, taking all that into consideration, I think we have been very fair in that. He also misses out commas where they should have commas. Anyway, so taking all that into consideration, I think we have been very fair in our approach and in enabling you to stay at Two Little Northfields for the present time. Okay. It kind of feels that I'm talking to a small child. But you see, I had to stay at the Barnet house because I was unable to move into the one-bedroom bed sitting Barnock, um, because there was this lockdown thing going on. I mean, Stuart, you do realise that the entire country has been locked down due to something called the COVID pandemic. Just in case you've got your head shoved up your backside, just thought I'd tell you that. Anyway, also, Crosskeys aren't developing any properties in Barnock at all. These new homes, they've been developed by somebody else. And Crosskeys have been the lucky recipient of the small percentage of those properties being made available for social housing. See, what happens when a housing developer seeks to develop a new estate in a city or a town, or in this case, a village, um, the local authority will want certain guarantees from them, and sometimes they've got to they'll have to build a school or some shopping facilities if it's a massive development. But usually, always, they have to provide a certain amount of the properties that they build for use as social housing, and obviously the property developers don't rent them out themselves. They basically let the local housing associations have them. Anyway, so it just seems a bit disingenuous, Stuart, of you to go blowing your own trumpet about that. Anyway, as for the rent arrears, which you spoke about, I endeavoured for some time to pay some rent to Crosskeys after my mum's death, but I was told that I was still on the tenancy agreement for the property in Peterborough, and until then, until I got removed off it, I couldn't pay any rent on the house in Barnock. Now, at the time, and this is like in would have been in February this year, my wife and I weren't talking to each other. I had no idea where she was or anything like that. Just knew that she was possibly still living at the house in Peterborough. But it wasn't as if I could go to her and say, "Hey, can we kind of sit down and talk about removing me from this tenancy agreement?" And in fact, I even spoke to somebody on the phone at Crosskeys and said to them, "Look, how am I going to get removed from that?" And they basically said, "Well, you and your ex-wife are going to have to come into the office together, and basically, agree that you should be removed from the tenancy agreement." Um, it just shows a remarkable a remarkable lack of any kind of concept as to what it means when a couple breaks up acrimoniously. Um, anyway, Stuart goes. I understand your view. It's not my view. I understand your view that your circumstances have changed and your wishes have changed. It's not my view that my circumstances have changed, Stuart. My circumstances have changed. That is a fact. Let's not beat around the bush. That is a fact. It's it's not a view. It might be your view that it's a view, but it's not. It's a fact. Anyway, I understand your view that your circumstances have changed and your wishes have changed. However, our position has not. You succeeded to a tenancy, not the property, and you did that as an individual. The reason for our stance on you not remaining in the property is that two-bedroom properties in Barnock are highly desirable, and we have proper processes for the letting of properties to ensure they are let fairly and to those in greatest need. Semicolon. So just because it works for you to remain in the property with your wife is not a reason to change our position. If you return to the property in Peterborough with your wife, we will adapt that property and install a stair lift, as well as consider other recommendations from an occupational therapist. Right, now this is a paragraph that is overflowing with kind of condescending bullshit. It's like he's like he's talking down to me. I think he thinks he's sending an email to somebody with a 2-digit IQ. Now, just in case you didn't know, Stuart, I'm kind of moderately intelligent. I went to public school, university degree. So you don't have to talk down to me like I'm a naughty little boy, because that's just really condescending. And also, it's kind of childish because it seems like you was really trying to have a dig there. Um, Now, you go on to say that two-bedroom properties are highly desirable in Barnock. So I'm guessing that Stuart believes that my wife and I are not suitable for desirable properties. And instead, we must live in a three-bedroom house in Peterborough. So this is a property that we would be under occupying, as opposed to the house in Barnock, which would be ideal for a couple and a daughter. Um, so, yes, Stuart, it works for us to remain in the property in Barnock, but you won't change your position, whereas you will pay for the property in Peterborough to be adapted the same way as this house has been adapted. Um, that just doesn't make any business sense. I mean, it really doesn't. Where's the profit in that? What are you running a business or a charity? Anyway, also this quote. So, just because it works for you to remain in the property with your wife is not a reason to change our position. That's completely patronising. So, that house in Barnock has been my home for the last few years. It's been my home without break. I don't know whether that means anything to you. I mean, evidently not. Anyway, he's gone on to say, if you do choose to remain at Two Little Northfields, then you will not be able to stay there beyond November 2020. If necessary, though we would prefer not to, we will take legal action to recover possession of the property if you do decide not to move out by November 2020. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, Stuart. I would rather have absolutely nothing to do with Crosskeys unless it was absolutely, completely, and utterly necessary. I mean, after all, you're flinging me out of my home. It's a home I've lived in for quite a few years without a break, as I've just mentioned. Um, but at the moment, I've got no choice really but to remain here at the mercy of your illogical processes, which you use to house families. Anyway, Stuart goes on. This is the killer for me. This is the killer. Finally, we are not unsympathetic to people with mental health issues. Our whole organisation is geared towards helping those in the greatest need and vulnerable across society. Our record in that speaks for itself. It does, though, mean sometimes we have to make decisions that are not to the liking of individuals, but it is done in the spirit of fairness and making sure that we provide housing to those in the greatest need. Your record speaks for itself. Care to share some real life examples? You've been told that for personal reasons related to mental health, it would be inappropriate for my wife and I to move into the house in Peterborough. Now, I'm not going to discuss on here for the reasons that my wife has for not moving back in there, because that's not appropriate. That's personal to her. Um, but for me, moving to Peterborough would remove the support network that I've got. It's the support network is crucial to helping me to maintain my mental health, just so as I don't go off the rails, so to speak. Now, if I move to Peterborough, I'm going to have to be referred to a new psychiatrist. Do you know how difficult that is and how long it takes? And the only way to keep that support network would be for me to move into the bedsit that Crosskeys has offered me, and for my wife and her daughter to move back into the Peterborough house, something which would have a dire detrimental effect on her mental health, and as well as actually separating our family. It seems as though Crosskeys are making decisions on who can live with who and where they should live, irrespective on the detrimental effect that it's having on the family. Um, and I think that it's kind of like some form of ethnic cleansing, and it's more based on class and wealth. As opposed to ethnicity, but that's what Crosskeys are doing. A two-bedroom house in Barnock is highly desirable, so my wife and I must move out of it and into a house in Peterborough that isn't suitable for our family because we'd only be occupying two bedrooms. And presumably, it's because, and I'm making this presumption because that's what Stuart's kind of implied, but basically we're not allowed to remain in the highly desirable property. So the property we're moving into in Peterborough is not highly desirable. I, I'm going to say again, because I'm kind of at the end of this video. I've lived in this house in Barnock without a proper break ever since my mum moved into the property. I moved in with her. I actually went to work on the day that we moved in, and I was at work for 24 hours. So I left a house in Stamford, um, went to work, got on the bus to go to work. And when I came back the next day, I had to get a bus to Barnock, and that was the first time I ever saw this house. But it kind of transpires that now that my wife needs to be cared for, added to which I need to be cared for as well, because my mental health issues are complex. The the message that I'm getting from Crosskeys is just that they don't seem to care, which had, as somebody who's cared for people for a long time, in different areas. This goes from caring for people in a prison environment, caring for people in care homes, caring for my mum, and caring for my wife in the past. I just think that's kind of shocking. That really is a terrible indictment on Crosskeys ways of dealing with people with mental health issues and medical health issues as well. So I'm just going to say, I'm just going to finish with this. Stuart, when you drive your expensive car back to your mansion, I mean, I'm kind of guessing you've got a BMW or an Audi or a Mercedes, but when you drive your expensive car back to your mansion when you finish work tomorrow, um, when you wash your hands of the problems of others, just remember that these decisions that you make in your six-figure salary job can have a massively negative effect on the people who rely on the organization you work for. It seems to me that you're more interested in trying to score points in emails that are full of vacuous cut and paste drivel, riddled with typos, than what you are actually putting people in the right sort of properties. And you're the director of housing needs. So I don't know how you got promoted to that position, Stuart, but I think it's a job that's kind of outside of your level of ability. I mean, I wonder what school you went to, Stuart. Anyway, just in case you're thinking that I shouldn't be reading out this email on a YouTube video, and I'm sure that Stuart was already getting ready to blast down to the legal department of Crosskeys. This is the message that goes at the bottom of their email. This email and any files transmitted with it are intended solely for the use of the individual or department to whom they are addressed, and for a purpose previously defined or confirmed within this email. So that seems, pretty much cut and dry. However, the information may be subject to public disclosure under prevailing legislation. Unless the information is legally exempt from this disclosure, the confidentiality of this email and your reply cannot be guaranteed. Now, Stuart, but I didn't bother putting that disclaimer at the bottom of the email that I sent to you, but I'm going to say it now. What should have gone at the bottom of my email to you, sorry, but I don't work in the legal department, but what should have gone was the exact same message there. See, the information here is legally exempt from disclosure, and as a consequence, the confidentiality of the email that I sent you and your reply to me cannot be guaranteed. And that is why I've read out this video. And hopefully, I'll put you in a bad mood. So, you know what? I'm sure I'll be speaking to you again at some point, Stuart. Whether by this kind of manner, where I do an open video to you, or whether you actually kind of have got the the politeness to sit down and explain to me why you're turfing me out of my home. But anyway, that's the end of this video. I think I've overrun, but I always generally do overrun. I don't think I had anything more to say. Just a case of watching this space. Oh, and I think it's 10 weeks today that I've been sober. So that's 10 weeks without any alcohol at all. And you know what? I actually feel I feel pretty damn good. I feel I feel as though I've gone back to the intelligent man that I was, the intelligent, caring man that I was before I became an alcoholic. So yeah, long may it last. But anyway, look, I've got to figure out how to end this video. Right, thank you for watching. Well, apart from Stuart, because I'm sure I've kind of pissed you off, but thank you for watching, and catch me next time. I promise. I keep saying it. I promise that I will do a video about uh, borderline personality disorder this week. I hope. Well, it's Monday today. Yeah, and I keep saying it. I'll do it on Wednesday, but I promise that I will. I've got nothing to do tomorrow, so I'll sit down and write kind of a script, something that's a little less more rambling than the stuff that I normally do. But anyway, thank you for watching. God, 35 minutes. It was only supposed to be 10 minutes. I kind of went off script quite a few times. So yeah, thank you for watching. We've got to continue to stay safe because the lockdown's still pretty much in effect. So stay safe and see you next time. Thank you for watching.